Hi, welcome to Awaken Health Pod. I'm Jennifer Grogan, Integrative Health Coach with Greenleaf Wellness here in Central Illinois.
And Shauna Squirtle with Inspire Wellness for You from Arizona.
How are you today?
I'm hanging in there. It's been
Yeah.
an interesting week and not quite expected, a little tougher than usual, a little bit of a roller coaster in some areas, but it happens and I'm here and I'm excited to be here. So today we're going to talk about, with Awaken Health Pod, acid reflux and Gerd, and just how maybe you could find health support in this area. And briefly, I spoke to you yesterday, and you mentioned you can kind of personalize with acid reflux and GERD. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a little bit about that is I myself have had acid reflux. You get the nasty taste in your mouth, kind of like that burning sensation in your throat. But in the past probably 2 years, we've had our really difficult time with our youngest, who's 14 now, with GERD. And I know that 20 to 30% of our population suffers with GERD. And so that is the gastroesophageal reflux disease. And it started when he was in fifth grade. And I noticed that he was getting more stressed at school, like the demands of all the homework and all this other stuff. And I just noticed that he started just throwing up and associated with the really deep pain in the gut. And sometimes it was the excess diarrhea with it. So we were like, okay, does he have the flu? And then he went and missed a whole week of school because no matter what he would eat, it would just come back up and, go to the bathroom. And it was just the spur of the moment. And he'd be like the severe pain. And finally took him to the doctor for the diagnosis. And the way the doctor explained it was, it's kind of like a sneeze. You feel it come in and all of a sudden that impact, you just sneeze. It was kind of like that in the stomach where the little opening and then it just opens really fast. And so all this burst of the acid comes up and then it causes all the pain and then the throw up. And then, with that pain being so bad, caused the diarrhea for him.
Yeah.
And then it was, okay, well, now we have to watch your food and, try and tell that to a 12-year-old that you can't have the things that you really like and where mom's going to monitor it, and I always got told, just because you're a health coach doesn't mean I have to eat healthy too, So I was like, well, if you want to get better, because when you have that acid reflux like that, it can cause scarring in the esophagus. And so then they were like, we'll put him on Zantac for a while. I think we're doing 150 milligrams of that over the counter, and it seemed to have helped. Then we could go, several months, and then out of the blue, 3 a.m, we have another burst of it. He's just in severe pain, and so it's very uncomfortable, and he's constantly clearing his throat like he's got a lump.
Right.
And I know it's like, trying to clear it.
Right.
And he gets the post-nasal drip. And I know when we talked about the IBS podcast where I had eliminate foods and stuff, I always know like ahead of time the things that's going to cause him to get the post-nasal drip. And it seemed to be the red sauces, too much tacos, or, you've had pizza too much, or, whatever. And when we start identifying the foods that were triggering it, that's when you start minimizing how much of that wonderful food that you like so much is causing all this problem, it seems to have helped. I will say that he's not really on the Zantac full blown like he was for a while. And probably in the last 8 months, we probably had one flare up, just out of the blue. And it's freaky. The doctor's like, if it happens anymore, we're going to have to do an endoscopy to make sure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've been through the past 2 years.
It's hard and it's tough, and we worry about the little kids, and it's just amazing because we do these videos because Jen and I enjoy collaborating together. My favorite part about co-hosting this podcast is we don't plan ahead. I personally kind of avoid sharing with you because I love that we come from different perspectives. I mean, we have different focuses on health, different perspectives, and we come here with the podcast and we collaborate together. And a lot of the times we're sharing something like Jen just did, about what we've dealt with in our life. And sometimes these podcasts, I love doing them not only to offer resources to clients and to definitely our listeners, but I learn, we learn from them ourselves. And last year in early spring, we did a podcast on adrenals. And it's so funny because this year I re-listened to it, and it's like, how did I not realize that I was on the onset of my adrenals taking a turn for the worse? So not at the time I did the podcast, but later, and I dealt with it for a while. And now I re-listened to it and I'm like, yep, all of that. Oh, okay. But in terms of the acid reflux and the GERD, it's so interesting. We'll both learn from each other in this podcast, I'm sure. And like you said, it's embarrassing too. It's not just the pain and the illnesses and the diarrhea and vomiting and different things. Even just that cough of trying to clear their throat it's embarrassing to a lot of people, especially, elderly. And mainly, what happens is I have a little picture I printed from online of the digestive system, so anybody can go online and look this up. Like you mentioned, we have that valve at the bottom of the esophagus. Well, so we've got the esophagus, the valve, and then the stomach. Stomach acids are so important. The acidity level is important, and the quantity is important. And so what happens is a lot of people will take medication for GERD and acid reflux because, like you mentioned, the acid going up into the esophagus is very damaging, very irritating. It's not a good thing. But the medications often will neutralize the stomach acid, so that way when it comes back in the esophagus, it's not so aggressive. However, we need the stomach acid level to be that acidic for a reason. Other medications will block production of stomach acid, so then we're not getting the right quantity of the stomach acid that we need. So what happens is the stomach acid is responsible. So we've got enzymes in our saliva, we've got the stomach acid. All of this is responsible for breaking down food, as most of us know, to go into the small intestine so we can absorb our nutrients. Well, if the stomach acid is at a low quantity, it can't signal to the gallbladder and the pancreas to release other enzymes and bile to continue functioning, to break down food, to absorb all those nutrients. The other situation is if the acid levels aren't there, those signals don't take place either. And so what happens is the food still has to go through the digestive process, go into the bowels, go into the small and large intestine. So that's where the diarrhea happens, is if the stomach acids are supposed to be high, they send the signals to the gallbladder and the pancreas to continue sending more enzymes to actually neutralize the acid in, the broken down food and particles. So it needs to be at a high acid level here in the stomach, but it actually gets neutralized before it goes into the small intestine. So if the signaling and the gallbladder and the pancreas and the enzymes and the bile aren't producing properly, then what's happening is those food particles and vitamins and minerals are at a really high acid level going into the small intestine. That's what causes irritability in the intestine, inflammation, burning. That's why we get diarrhea in that situation, because the food still has to go through, but the acid's too high. It never got neutralized. And so it's triggering symptoms in the small intestine. So the small intestine tries to protect itself and releases water and juices and fluid to hurry up and flush it out. And that's painful, embarrassing, especially, for example, for your son being in school and trying to study and stay focused. So that may be something to consider, is the stomach acids itself.
Mhm. Well, I know like too much of the acidic foods isn't good, the caffeine isn't good, and so
Right.
we've limited a lot. We change his food around. I mean, we still have those arguments back and forth. Like, I don't want that; it's too healthy, But I'm like, you have to minimize your intake of what you enjoy because what
Yeah.
you enjoy happen to be the foods that cause all the excess acid. So he's learning, and it can be corrected. You just really got to zone in on what you're eating and putting in your body. Alcohol is not good.
Right.
Smoking, overeating,
Hmm.
and if you're not eating, chewing properly to be able to digest, you can look at digestive enzymes. Our body naturally has those, but just kind of helps go in and break it down for you for passing through the
Absolutely.
intestine. So I mean, there's different ways of handling it. I know, like if you can avoid going to bed or laying down 2 to 3 hours after you eat, or prop your bed up so it's at a slant. Because when you're walking around and you're sitting and standing, whatever, the gravity pulls that down. It's when you lay down or recline, or how I've noticed it. Like I can't eat and then recline a little bit, and I'm like, oh man, this is not fun. But just being mindful of what you're doing and what's causing it and what helps alleviate it. So, um,
Especially
yeah.
with kids, it makes me wonder, they're running and jumping and bouncing
Mhm.
around, so if there's a full amount of stomach acid and that valve is flapping, it's swishing and washing back up into the esophagus, just like you said, with laying down. Sometimes eating smaller meals more frequently is better than, like you said, eating a big, rich, and gorging meal can cause that to come up. And what happens too is some of those enzymes, for example, the amylase in the saliva helps digest carbs, but so does the gallbladder and the pancreas and the stomach acids, and the whole system also will do that. But what happens is, if those digestive enzymes are at a minimal because we didn't chew, or we ate too much, or we didn't absorb, and things didn't get signaled, when it goes into the intestines and the enzymes aren't there to break down the carbs, it will create gases. And so those gases will go all the way up from the to the bottom of the stomach, to the top, and into the esophagus. That's kind of like where the heartburn comes from. So it's just so amazing and crazy how much we overlook, just simple things like our digestive system and, stomach acids, food, stress, like you mentioned, sugar, alcohol, caffeine, all of that. The apple cider vinegar seems to be really beneficial for a lot of people. We want to take into consideration bio-individuality, and things affect people differently and work different for others. But just mixing a little bit of apple cider vinegar with a little bit of water before they eat can be helpful.
It's not the best tasting, but it does help.
And
If you've never had it before, just prepared, you probably won't like it. But if you're taking it, and you know why you're taking it, and that's going to help, then
yeah,
make that connection. You're my friend, you're going to help me. But thinking back on my son, because he's constantly clearing his throat, that gag feeling, he's got a super sensitive gag reflex. He's always been that way. He can't wear anything that is up around his neck. And
yeah,
he's constantly like pulling on it and gagging. And so it's like, okay, we have to go with loose fitting clothes, So, I mean, it's things like that. If you're wearing a tight belt, kind of loosen it a
right,
little bit.
yeah,
If you feel that you need to lose weight, maybe taking some of that off would help.
it does.
Knowing what you're eating is the key. Garlic, for some people can't handle that because of that aftertaste is making me feel icky. I know ginger is really good about calming the stomach and the digestion. I also know, for me, I will only drink room temp water or warm to hot water. And my husband is like, why are you doing that? I'm like, because it's helping with the digestion. If you're going to go and cool off the stomach acids, how is that going to help you digest? And so there's been a debate back and forth for a while. And so I'm like, just try the warm water or room temp. You'll probably be surprised, But even my kids are like, cold, so much better. And I'm like, it might be better on a hot day, but in all reality, you're not helping your digestion with cold
Yeah,
water. So it's just kind of funny. I'm
I
like,
know.
hot water with honey, please.
Well, and that's another misconception too, is, I mean, I've been guilty about this in the past, having kids. I always want them to be really hydrated. So I'm like, when they were little, I'm like, drink a lot of water before bed and eat, drink a lot of water while you're eating. Well, now I'm like, no, don't drink a lot of water before bed, because then you're not going to sleep good. You're going to get up more. You're going to pee more often. Well, the same thing with drinking while you eat. I very rarely will drink while I eat. I hardly will even have a glass there at the table, unless it's like we eat somewhere ethnic and the gourmet drink or tea or whatever goes with that meal. But basically what will happen is, if you're drinking so much while you're eating water, for example, it dilutes the stomach acids. And so then you have a problem breaking down the food. You have a problem digesting, poor digestion. You're not absorbing nutrients. And so sometimes, you could talk to your physician, but supplementing with hydrochloric acid can be very beneficial. I mean, it's important for digestion. It's important for the gut. It really helps ease symptoms for many people with GERD and acid reflux. It's beneficial to just your gut, your joints, like so many other aspects that we really wouldn't consider.
Mm-hmm. And there's the herbs, like I said, ginger, there's the licorice and black pepper, the Indian pepper, stuff like that. It's all good for like stomach ulcers or keeping your cells from getting ulcers, digestion. So, I mean, those are some supplements you can look into. Recommend that you talk to your doctor if you have high blood pressure, because some of those may not be a good fit for you, but always try it out, ask. And then if you try it and after approval, then see if it works. But I know sometimes they say avoid peppermint, but I know for like my son, he's always saying, can I have a mint? Can I have a mint? And I don't know if it's because he's got that little taste going on, or if it's because he feels like it's soothing his stomach. But, Pepto-Bismol, it has like a peppermint taste to it. So, and it's supposed to be calming.
Have they ever done any x-rays on his valve to see if it's closing all the way or swollen or irritated, or if the muscle there is strong enough to stay latched? Because the purpose of the valve is to keep the acids in and the food down, but when there's issue, then it comes back up.
We've not had it in the past 2 years. I will say that they attempted that when he was younger, because he was always gagging.
Wow.
On everything. But when they went to do the procedure, he was so gaggy, the doctor was like, I can't do this. I can't get in. So I know that was one of the things that we left it as. If it flares up again, we're going to have to go in for the testing. And he's not wanting that. So I'm like, well, then stick with what we're doing, because it obviously helps. So we'll see. Yeah, we're keeping an eye on him. I know end of last summer, he was going outside and he came in real lightheaded and was turning like really pale. And I was like, you need to drink something, sit in the chair, Well, we went in for the EKG, we had the chest x-ray, and it came back he had walking pneumonia.
Wow.
But he didn't have any symptoms. And so I'm like, well, how long has that been there? It's like, is that the cause of what we've been going through? And it just never went away. Yeah. We put him on a round of antibiotic for a week, and there was no follow-up, but he seems to be fine. And so, I just watch him, mother hen over here.
No.
But yeah.
Wow.
Just take care of your body.
Yeah, exactly. And, sometimes, be mindful of how the medications work, as in blocking or neutralizing. Be mindful of how you can improve your digestion with chewing, the apple cider vinegar, blocking some of those trigger foods and liquids. And know, that a lot of people can really get a lot of help with the symptoms. I've had a client recently, and in less than 3 weeks, she completely reversed her acid reflux and GERD by some changes she made. And it's fantastic. And that's what I said, people get a little bit embarrassed of the cough, or you always just feel like something's in there, or you need to have that drink to just kind of like wash things down. It's not fun, that's for sure. And you don't want to damage your esophagus. So it's very important to figure out a way to ease what's going on and get more information.
Yeah, if you can, try and change your food habits because for your environment as well. You don't want to stay on those meds for too long. I was on a prescription med for acid reflux, and I got sick and tired of taking medicine. And then it wasn't until I started changing my whole outlook on my body and my health that medication free, and I had PCOS too. So, I mean, a lot of it can be switched around with diet and exercise, meditation and prayer, but, listen to your body and talk to somebody, that's what we're here for. Um, it's just amazing how you can go from feeling like crap and eating all the wrong things, thinking, oh, it's good for you. And then your body's rejecting it. And you just keep piling on and on and on. And finally, you're like the light bulb goes off. And then you're like, oh, yeah. And then when you start changing, you're like, I feel great. This is really addicting. Like,
Yeah.
eating like this every day.
And we have different enzymes and we've got our bile production. Each enzyme kind of has its own properties, whether it's carbs, whether it's fats and proteins, whatever the case may be. So that's why supporting, like you said, with some digestive enzymes can be beneficial as well. And it might just give your digestive system a break long enough that your enzymes will start to, improve on their own and build back up as well. Our digestive system is such a big deal. It works really well when we're sleeping, when we're resting and we're not focused on other things. When we're stressed, our digestive system, we don't digest. The body focuses on those stress hormones. And so I thought it was really interesting to link GERD and acid reflux to the digestive system, to understand a little bit more about how things are working inside, and again, how magnificent the body is usually doing its job.
Amazing.
So yes, Jen is in Illinois. I am in Arizona. That does not mean that if you are not in Arizona or in Illinois that we can't work with you. We can do phone consultations, video conferences, video sessions. So just know that's an option. I love remote coaching. So give us a ring. Let us know if we can answer some questions or send you some articles that may, be relative to something you're dealing with. And until next time.
Stay happy and healthy.